Okay, so gratitude. I was listening to this wellness podcast, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of got me thinking about this whole gratitude thing on a different level.
Yep.
Because they weren't just saying, like, think positive.
Yeah.
You know, it was more about, like, actual benefits.
Yeah.
Measurable stuff, like down to a cellular level almost.
Interesting. So what they were saying, it's not just some woo-woo thing. It's like actually backed up by science.
Exactly. It really got me thinking, and it made me want to do a deep dive because I bet a lot of people think it's just about like keeping a gratitude journal or whatever.
Right, right.
But this was different. They were talking about like real impact on our mental health, obviously, but also physical health, even our relationships.
Well, and that's what's so fascinating, right? Because when we're talking about gratitude, we're not just talking about some, whimsical notion.
Right.
It actually has deep roots in our neurochemistry. Like literally when we experience gratitude, our brains are releasing dopamine, serotonin, all those feel-good chemicals.
See, this is what I'm talking about. It's like a gratitude glow up, but from the inside out. But okay, so it makes you feel good, but what does that actually do?
Well, for one thing, it has a huge impact on our nervous system. It's incredibly calming.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Stress relief, all that.
Exactly. But it goes even deeper than that. The podcast I was listening to, they were talking about how gratitude can even affect things like, get this, your sleep, even your blood pressure.
Oh, wow. Okay, I remember that. That was the part that really blew my mind. Because, I mean, that's wild. Like, we're not just talking about, like, feeling a little happier. We're talking about our bodies literally functioning better because we're thinking about things we're grateful for.
That's exactly it. Like, there was this research study, University of California, I think. They found that people who, consistently practice gratitude, they had lower levels of inflammation.
Interesting.
Which is huge because inflammation is a major contributor to heart disease.
Right.
And not just that, but they also saw improvements in sleep quality.
Wow. Makes you wonder what else it can do. But how does it actually work, Like, what's the mechanism there?
The podcast mentioned something about shifting from, like, a mindset of lack to a mindset of abundance, something like that.
Yes, that's a key part of it for sure. It's like, okay, picture this. Our brains, right? They have this negativity bias, like hardwired into us from, back in the caveman days.
Right.
Back then, you had to focus on threats to stay safe. So our brains, they're kind of stuck in that mode.
Still scanning for danger.
But gratitude disrupts that old wiring.
Huh. Okay. I like where this is going. So how do we do that? Rewire those neural pathways.
By focusing on what we do have, on what we appreciate. We're basically retraining our brains to seek out the positive, to savor it even.
Wow. Okay, that's actually really powerful when you think about it. So instead of constantly scanning for what's wrong, we're training our brains to see the good.
Exactly.
It's like swapping out the lens through which we view the world. And speaking of which, the podcast, they mentioned this thing called a morning gratitude ritual. Yes. Love that one.
Have you heard of this?
Yeah.
Because they were saying that's one way to start shifting this whole perspective thing.
Absolutely. And I love how simple it is, We tend to overcomplicate things, but with this, you're literally just taking a few minutes each morning.
Yeah, they made it sound super doable.
And I'm reflecting on a few things you're grateful for, and that's it. But even that small act, it can have a huge impact on reshaping those neural pathways we were just talking about.
See, this is why I love these deep dives. You uncover these little golden nuggets of, like, wisdom that you can actually use. It's not just theory, it's practical stuff.
Right.
And the beauty of it is you don't need any fancy equipment or, like, hours of free time.
Exactly. You can literally do it while you're, like, brushing your teeth or waiting for your coffee to brew.
I know. That's what I thought. It's so simple. But, okay, real talk for a sec, because I got to be honest. Some days, it's hard to find things to be grateful for. You know?
Oh, tell me about it. It's like life throws you curveballs. Stress piles up. You get stuck in traffic. Suddenly, that gratitude journal is looking pretty blank.
Exactly. And then you're like, what am I even supposed to be grateful for right now?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So for those blah days when you're just like, blah, what do we do?
I'm so glad you asked that because that is a really important point. Actually, the podcast addressed it head on, which I appreciated.
Oh, good. Okay, so what'd they say?
They were saying that, challenging times, those are actually like prime opportunities to really flex those gratitude muscles.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I kind of see where you're going with this.
It's about finding those little glimmers of positivity, those small comforts, even when everything feels kind of chaotic.
Okay, yeah. I like that. So it's like instead of getting lost in the storm cloud, we're looking for the silver lining, right?
Exactly. And the thing is, when you start looking for those silver linings, even the tiny ones, it builds resilience over time.
Makes sense. But how do we like actually do that? Because it's easy to say, look for the silver lining, but when you're in the middle of it,
Right.
it's not always so easy.
Yeah, for sure. But I think that's what makes this whole gratitude thing so powerful. Like, it's not about toxic positivity, you know?
Right.
It's not about pretending everything's perfect. It's about acknowledging the tough stuff and still finding things to be grateful for.
Yeah.
And you know what? There's this quote by Viktor Frankl that really captures this.
Oh, yeah. Who's that?
He was a Holocaust survivor and also a psychologist. Really incredible guy. Anyway, he said, everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way.
Wow. Yeah, that really hits home.
Right.
Because it's saying, even in the most difficult circumstances, we still have the power to choose how we respond.
Heh.
It's not always easy,
Yeah.
but we have that choice.
Absolutely. And, you know, every time we choose gratitude, even
Yeah.
for something small, it's like we're strengthening that gratitude muscle, you know?
I like that. Okay.
Yeah.
So how do we actually work that muscle? The podcast mentioned gratitude reminders. What are those?
Basically, it's just a little mental nudge, you know, like a little reminder to shift your focus towards appreciation. So it could be something as simple as like a sticky note on your mirror,
Oh, okay. I like that.
or a reminder on your phone, or even just a specific time of day where you pause and just ask yourself, what's one thing I'm grateful for right now?
So instead of waiting for those big, obvious things, it's about being more intentional about finding those smaller moments throughout the day.
Exactly, because those small moments, they really add up.
That's so true. Okay, I'm going to try that.
Do it. Because remember, it's about retraining your brain. And like any kind of training, it takes consistent effort, you know?
Right. So the reminders are like those little nudges to keep us on track.
Precisely. It's like having a little gratitude buddy with you throughout the day. Okay, that's kind of cute, actually. I like that visual. But what about, like, okay, so you're having a really tough day, and those negative thoughts just keep creeping in. What do you do then?
Well, first of all, don't beat yourself up about it. It happens to all of us, right? But the podcast actually had a great suggestion for this. They were saying, you know how we were talking about gratitude reminders?
Yeah.
They said, try pairing that with a brief mindfulness practice, like just taking a few deep breaths. Just kind of resets your mind for a second.
Just hitting the reset button.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It really is amazing how a few deep breaths can just shift your whole energy, you know?
It's like you're giving yourself permission to just like let go of those negative thoughts and create some space for something more positive.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about the science, we've talked about some simple but effective strategies,
Mhm.
but I'm curious, how do we go from these little moments to making gratitude a more, you know, lasting habit?
Right. Because it's not just about like checking off a box every day.
Yeah. Exactly. The podcast mentions something about creating a gratitude space, but to be honest, my apartment is already like bursting at the seams.
Right. Yeah. I hear you on that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be anything drastic, you know?
Okay.
It's not about adding more stuff to your to-do list. It's more about like infusing those little reminders into your existing environment.
Okay, I like that. So give me some examples.
Sure. So, for example, maybe you have that spot on your windowsill where you always have your morning coffee.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
maybe that becomes your little gratitude space. Or, I don't know, what's your favorite spot to like curl up with a good book?
Oh, my comfy armchair for sure.
There you go.
Yeah.
Make that your gratitude space. It's not about creating something new. It's just about designating that space for those grateful reflections.
It's like a visual cue.
Exactly. And you know, it's cool. Even just the act of anticipating something pleasurable, like returning to that comfy armchair, it can actually release those feel-good chemicals in our brains. So we're basically hacking our own happiness by creating these like little pockets of gratitude throughout our day.
Pretty much.
I love it. And speaking of sharing the joy, the podcast also talked about the power of like sharing your gratitude journey, like even starting a gratitude circle with friends or family.
Oh, I love that. Because it's amazing how sharing our experiences can actually amplify the benefits.
Totally. It's like it makes it more real somehow.
Right. And not only that, but it creates this like ripple effect of positivity.
Because you're putting it out there.
Exactly. And don't forget, we as humans, we're hardwired for connection, you know? So when we share something we're grateful for, it lights up the reward centers in our brains.
Fascinating.
And not just ours. but also the brains of the people we're sharing with.
Wow. It's like a double dose of gratitude goodness. I love that. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from the neuroscience of gratitude to practical tips we can all use to weave it into our daily lives.
We really have. It's been fun.
It has. I always learn so much from these deep dives.
Me too.
Yeah,
It's so interesting to really dig into these topics and see what the research says.
totally. And speaking of research, I'm curious, is there anything else that surprised you or that you're still kind of thinking about?
There was this one thing they said at the very end of the podcast episode, really stuck with me.
Oh, yeah. What was it?
They were saying, okay, so you're practicing gratitude. You're making your list of things you're grateful for. But then they were like, take it a step further. Ask yourself why.
Why?
Yeah. Why am I grateful for this person or this experience or even just this moment? Because it's in that why that we often uncover a deeper meaning, a deeper appreciation.
Oh, wow. That's so true. It's like gratitude on a whole new level.
Right.
I love it. So listeners, as you go about your day, we encourage you to find those little moments of appreciation, create your own gratitude spaces, share the joy with those around you. And remember, even small shifts in perspective can create a ripple effect of positivity. That extends far beyond ourselves. Until next time, keep diving deep.